Good day, world. Pleased to see you all. Today, we have Rebecca Tolin. Now, Rebecca is a coach and TMS therapist. The reason she's coming on is to share with us her own personal experience and then to give us an idea of somatic tracking, because I think that would be very beneficial. Now, Rebecca was also a news anchor, so she's well used to speaking to people and doing reporting. So anyone who has any questions, please put them on the side and we will follow them up. Now, Tova isn't with us today because it's 4 a.m. in Israel. So this broadcast is more for Australia and America and less for Europe. So thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Rebecca. Now, please share a little bit about your bio, please, and how you came to this area, because it's actually wonderful to have someone who has lived the experience and now turns it around and shares it with others. So thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Rose. I love watching this show because to me, it's like a chorus of voices from around the world that have all discovered the same knowledge and have this real passion for it. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I know you get to be on in the midday this time. It's evening here in the States. So like a lot of people, when I look back, I had different mind-body symptoms early on, and certainly in my 20s, I had a lot of back pain and migraines and a lot of urinary tract infections. But I was always able to sort of push on, and they didn't affect my life much. I was a really active TV news reporter. I was traveling the world quite often. And then my work took me to Asia when I was about 34 years old. And I was sexually assaulted in Asia by somebody that I knew through work. And as you can imagine, that was extremely traumatic experience. It reactivated an earlier sexual assault I had when I was in college. And in the case when I was in my 30s, I actually got a urinary tract infection just as they were closing away I can be on this flight with a UTI, because I had had a history of those and they're really excruciating. Unfortunately, they couldn't, so I had to remain on the flight because they already had the doors closed and everything. And I passed out from the pain during that flight. It was just really... I think it was emotional overwhelm as well as the physical symptoms. And so when I got back to the States, I became really exhausted. And at this point, I was still able to work, but I went to some naturopathic doctors and things, and they didn't know what was going on. Well, strangely enough, I was sent back to Asia about a year later. And this time, there was no overt trauma, but it was a stressful experience. I didn't feel up to it. I was having all these symptoms. But at that time, I got these 3 viruses in a row. And Rose, they were just different kind of viruses. Something felt really deep inside of me. And I got back to the States and my whole system crashed. So at this point, I was having these really intense flu-like symptoms around the clock. I couldn't sleep. My system was tired and wired. There was a lot of body pain, brain fog. I couldn't remember the names of even colleagues or close friends. And I could hardly even walk. So I could just sort of like walk from room to room. So I became really completely sort of disabled overnight. And it was really a terrifying experience. So I would say that's kind of like the first stage of the symptoms and how they began.
So how did you come to realize it was TMS? Because you're a science reporter anyway, or you were, so you're in that mode to actually look for stuff. So how did you look at something like the mind-body and still be a science reporter as if the mind and body didn't belong together? Can you
right
share with our
because
audience?
we come from that Newtonian model, right, where everything's separate, including the mind and the body. Well, I tell you, I was a dogged reporter, and so even though I was basically couldn't really couldn't even leave my house much. That went on for a number of months, but then I started gaining a little bit of energy, and I would try to go back to work as a broadcast journalist, but I literally would feel like I was going to fall over. I would be dizzy and lightheaded, and my energy would last about an hour. So after some months, I was laid off from this career that I really loved. I sort of retreated to my house. I eventually had to go on disability. And I actually tried to find every solution I could through the biomedical model. So like most of us, I thought and was sort of led to believe that all these symptoms were caused by something physical. And in my case, it was really the diagnosis was post-viral syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME, fibromyalgia. I also had developed interstitial cystitis. And then there's like all these other ancillary diagnoses you get, like leaky gut syndrome and candida overgrowth. So I was really trying all the diets, all the supplements. I went to many specialists, rheumatologists, neurologists. They usually pointed to the viruses, and they said they had seeped into my brain and I would probably have to live like this forever.
I haven't heard that one before.
Terrifying. Right.
That's a new one for me.
So alarming. They said it got through the blood-brain barrier, and you have very high titers. So looking back now and what I know about TMS, I see that my symptoms dramatically worsened after I was told those things, that you're going to have to live like this. You're very fragile. You really shouldn't do any more than you can, which wasn't much. I was barely just able to take care of myself at this point. And so I pursued everything they told me to take, the 30 different supplements. I did antiviral IVs, so really strong medications that totally crashed my system. I did a lot of holistic medicine, went to healers. I would have done anything. And I did. And I was a dogged reporter. So I just kind of kept trying and trying, but nothing moved the needle. And at this point, I was on disability. I really had been through, I should say too, not to go into all the details, but there was a lot of other deep griefs that happened in those years. My father passed away, as well as 3 other close family members. I lost my career and really ability to function in the world. So what I know about TMS, all those underlying emotions were really perpetuating these symptoms. But to answer your question, in a long way, I, interestingly enough, so I should say that my healing journey sort of moved into a different phase. I got to this point where I noticed really the only thing that helped was meditation, gentle yoga, listening to Eckhart Tolle or reading Eckhart Tolle or some sort of kind of spiritual study, and writing poetry. And I couldn't do much physically, so I just kind of surrendered to that after a while. I mean, a while, meaning about 12 years. And I got to this point where the symptoms were really intense, but I really felt a peace about it. There was a certain surrender. And I think it was from all the meditation and the yoga I was practicing. So Rose, from that place, I was quite receptive, and I was taking this online writing class. And I met this woman who said, I recovered from chronic fatigue syndrome, and I can tell you all about this kind of mind-body work. And I said, well, I can only talk on the phone about 10 minutes. I mean, this is how actually incapacitated I was. I would get migraines if I would talk to people. I would get insomnia. So I said, I have about 10 minutes. So we had this conversation, and we began the conversation. And she started telling me about John Sarno and Howard Schubiner and this whole body of work. And she laid out such a convincing case for how she healed, how she was told it was Epstein-Barr, how she was told it was faulty mitochondria, and all the things I was told. And Rose, guess what? 3 hours later in this conversation, I got up and ran around the block.
Oh, wow.
I literally had the spontaneous remission. I was filled with energy because I recognized the truth. And what happened at the end of that conversation, she said, Rebecca, You are not sick. And I wasn't offended because I got that she knew the symptoms were real. Of course they're real, but she was saying this is caused by your brain and nervous system. You're not broken or irreparably sick. And I got it. And I said, I am not sick. And my whole system shifted. I just filled with energy.
Do you think, Rebecca, that that period of time when you're doing the yoga, doing the meditation, calmed your vasovagal system enough to be receptive?
Exactly it.
Yeah.
So well
So,
put.
yeah, but because you said it was spontaneous, but in my thought pattern, no, you were open to it. So it wasn't so spontaneous. It was a journey that you took to reach that part. Would you mind also telling the audience about how you felt about yourself before you took that journey? Could you describe the self-criticism so that they can see their own attitude and that transformation, that turnover, so you can actually see that you're looking at the same human being, but from a different angle. And when you look at it from a different angle, you see this amazing person, that has overcome these problems. So just would you mind just mentioning how you felt day in, day out, when you woke up in the morning, you saw the pain? Could you describe that for our audience, please?
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, I love that you bring up some of the self-criticism and the personality characteristics, because I would say before this entire saga where I got the chronic fatigue syndrome, which I really believe is TMS, I was very hard driving. Like a lot of us, I was this overachiever, and I was trying to prove my worth to the world. You know, I really thought if I just accomplished enough, I'll be worthy. Because there was a lot of self-doubt and self-criticism and perfectionism. And so I took that kind of hard driving attitude into my healing journey, where I was like trying to force it. It's like, I'm going to heal on this timeline so I can keep my career and kind of go back to my old life. But that attitude, putting all that pressure on yourself, obviously just perpetuates the symptoms even more. And so I started seeing over time of these really intense symptoms and a lot of grief, and really feeling just lost and purposeless. I did finally start noticing that those tendencies really exacerbated the symptoms. And I especially noticed that anything, as you pointed out, that calmed the nervous system, really just gave me a sense of peace. Now, I wasn't even thinking about it in terms of the nervous system then, but I noticed when I would read A New Earth, or just listen to some chanting or classical music, or just really look at the birds. I started spending a lot of time in nature, even though I could kind of just sit there. I would feel better. I would feel mentally and emotionally better at the least. And often the symptoms would subside a little bit. So then, having discovered TMS, and I had that light bulb moment. Now, one thing I want to make clear, because a lot of people feel like, well, I don't have the light bulb moment.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
Yeah, I really want to make clear that that was not the end of the story. First of all, yeah, it was preceded by a lot of contemplation and a surrender to what was. I wasn't giving up, but it was kind of like accepting, this is my life now. How can I find acceptance and peace in this moment? So that was a really important part of that receptivity, where I think I just got it. But then I spent months working with a TMS coach, a lovely man you had on this show a few weeks ago called Jim Prusak, who also lives here in San Diego. And we spent months really steeping in the knowledge, doing a lot of somatic tracking, and just interacting with the sensations in my body in a way that felt safer, because I'd been disassociated from my body, and really shifting those thoughts and tendencies. And, you know, I'm still a Virgo, so I've got a lot of that perfectionistic energy. But now it's sort of more like, yeah, I enjoy striving towards excellence, but if it starts feeling like pressure, and I start noticing little symptoms or internal stress, I normally just back off and just, it's not worth it. You know, it's really not worth it.
I've got another question. You said about being resentful of not having your old life back. How important really was your old life? And was it as fulfilling as you believed it was?
Yeah, it's a really insightful question because I had put a great deal of importance on my quote old life. I was in my early 30s when this happened, and I was a career woman. I knew I wanted to be a journalist since I was in 6th grade, and I sacrificed a lot to be in that profession. So it did mean a lot, and I actually did enjoy it. It wasn't just sort of an identity thing. I loved it in many ways. I also had wanted to have a family. So that was sort of the hardest thing is going through those child rearing years and seeing those tick away. That was just terrifying to me and really sad in many ways. But I would say I think your deeper point, there was a lot that I realized that really wasn't satisfying at all about living life. And that was that pushing, that trying to accomplish, to feel okay in who I was, to try to find acceptance, but being unconscious, because of course that never really works, right? So I think that it did feel too like in some ways I was living someone else's life. I was trying to kind of please my father and impress other people. Some of it was genuine, some of it wasn't. And so I think through this whole process, I did feel like I came into my own, like who I really am. And this work with the TMS and the mind body healing, it's so just true to my heart and my soul. I love it in a way that is beyond, I think, my previous profession.
So in a way, if you think about it, the drive, the importance of being a journalist was not really fulfilling for you. And I wonder how many other people who have got somatic pain and are stuck at home now, for example, not able to go to work, are dreaming about their old job. And what are they dreaming about? Because they're not really dreaming about reality, are they?
Exactly. We can tend to idealize things. And, although I don't think people have to find their perfect job or their perfect life to be out of pain, I have seen that with a number of people that I've worked with, there are underlying things. There's maybe a deep dissatisfaction in an area of their life that they're ignoring. And sometimes it is important to acknowledge this and to really come to terms with, is this really in alignment with who I am? And even if it's a situation we may not be able to leave right away, like a job, I think even writing about it, speaking about it, getting some clarity on, is this really who I am? And is this how I want to spend my time and my energy?
Yeah. Or does it speak to me, would be another way of putting it, wouldn't it? Does this job, no matter how wonderful it is, how what I'm achieving, like if you think about a science background, for example, like you're learning more and more and more and querying things. But if it's not satisfying that deep need in you, it's external, isn't it, really, I suppose, rather than internal.
It's well put, because I also think too, you could say internal is like being in the body. And when I think of how I used to live, it was from the neck up. And I think a lot of us in the West are living from the neck up, right? We're not really feeling the body sensations. And when we're disconnected from our body, we're also not receiving the kind of deep intuition and gut instinct that we get through our body, which was also something that came much more online in my own healing. I want to tell you one interesting story about a client I was working with recently who was in a job that she really strongly disliked. It was in accounting, and she dreaded going. And her hands and wrists started locking up. And so, of course, she got carpal tunnel, repetitive stress injury diagnoses, and was going to all kinds of physical therapists and those things. And so we started coaching together, and really her dream was to become a coach, a type of wellness coach. And so she left. She actually couldn't continue the job because her hands were frozen. So she had to leave. And as soon as she left the job, all the symptoms went away. And then but she had some other mind body symptoms. And then she started a job as a wellness coach. And the symptoms are gone and she actually feels better. So, I mean, I don't like to tell people something on the outside is going to cure you, because I don't think we need that. But sometimes there is something so out of alignment that our brain and our body are speaking to us.
Exactly. Well, I think that's probably typical, isn't it, really? Like if you're doing accounting and you really want to be a florist, well,
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's it. And also even the way we do things, right? If we're just coming at it with a lot of that perfectionism or people pleasing, that really doesn't feel safe to our brain and our nervous system. And so it all comes down to safety. And so if we're just trying to please someone else instead of being true to ourselves, it's going to be hard to really feel safe. I mean, affirmations are helpful. Like when I said I'm not sick and I really believed it, it did shift things. And saying that I'm safe and okay are really helpful. But sometimes you can get more precise to see what words really resonate with you.
Your own individual words. It's like your own mantra. You need to have, yes, you need a mantra that reflects your belief or your inner belief. But another comment you made before about pleasing your dad. And I was thinking, when you were saying about the accountancy lady, and then it came to my mind about being a florist. Could you just talk about how we want to please our families, or we want to be seen as being special? I'm not quite sure how we'd describe that, but there's something about, depending on where you are in your family system and your parents' relationship with each other, how we view ourselves. And you said you wanted your dad to be proud of you as a news anchor. Would you share a little bit about how important that was for you, maybe?
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right. It really depends on our family dynamics, but we tend to live in cultures that are very achievement oriented. And I know my dad he was born the year of the Great Depression. And I think there was a lot of stress and pressure to accomplish and achieve, really for survival, but also for social status, because his parents were immigrants from Russia. And so, my dad really always wanted me to be a TV news reporter. I think he wanted to go into sort of show business. And I wanted to please him. In many ways, it did suit. Journalism was a good match for me. So I'm lucky in that way. But I think it all depends where you're coming from, doesn't it, Rose? Because it's whether you're doing it for yourself, and like you say, it's internally focused, or if it's external to get approval from other people or the world, we're always going to be disappointed, right? Because not everybody can give us what we want. And then you learn through this work that you can parent yourself, essentially. You can become that loving adult that is giving yourself the kind of acceptance and even acknowledgement.
A lot of us have this sense that we've got to show our family that we're well adjusted or well off, or any of those things. And then the somatic pain comes and we actually destroy whatever we've been trying to build as well, don't we? Do you know what I mean? Like we lose all this striving, then just goes flat, doesn't it? And often I wonder, maybe we've got to a pinnacle, and then do you think we doubt ourselves when we get to that pinnacle and then we go flat?
Before the symptoms come on, you mean?
Yeah, and then the symptoms come on.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think there is something in us, in our psyche, in our heart, in our soul, whatever you believe in, that sort of knows we're off track, right? I mean, you can just even feel it in your gut. That's it. Something knows. It doesn't kind of feel quite right. But I think, of course, there's also that whole load of adverse childhood experiences and whatever previous stressors we've had as children or as adults that then just make that nervous system a lot more sensitive. And so I know a lot of people who develop TMS do have more sensitized brains and nervous systems. And in a way, you could say that we're almost forced to heed some of those messages, because our systems are reactionary. I mean, I think mine was actually quite resilient up until I went through that second sexual assault. And honestly, that threw my system into haywire because I went into freeze mode. I actually really blocked it out largely from my conscious awareness because I think it was just too overwhelming to face. And I really hadn't developed a habit pattern of talking about my emotions, right? Like most of us, wasn't in touch with my emotions. So I defaulted to that kind of disassociation.
True. But what happened to you was unspeakable as well.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
It was.
And, yes. And, you know, as I spoke to you the other day, as we prepared for this, I was reading up on sexual assault. 1 in 5 women or girls are sexually assaulted. So if you see a group of 5 people sitting at a table, one of those people is going to be assaulted. But we never talk about it. 1 in 20 boys. So, you know, see a group of men in a hotel or somewhere of 20 men and see that one of those, every lot of the has been assaulted, but we never talk about it. We never even share it. And it's so beautiful that you are sharing this. And one of my comments or reflections when we were talking about this was that the emotions are so hard to bear that we have to transfer them into pain. We have to, they're so deep and they're so, I can't tell anyone this because I was vulnerable and I allowed myself to be vulnerable, which is actually the lie that we've told ourselves, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, thank you for sharing those numbers are really astounding. And I think there is so much shame associated with molestation, rape, sexual assault. I imagine it's even more difficult for boys or men to come forward, culturally speaking. But I certainly just didn't really feel the availability of speaking about that. And I think that I feared for my life and my system went into complete shock. And I think that, you know, you can start to see these mind-body symptoms as benevolent. Like you're saying, they were protecting me from absolute terror. I'm sure there was rage. I, to this day, have not been in touch with the rage, but you can't be violated in that way and sort of lose your ability to function in the world without being rageful. But that just wasn't something that was available or I knew how to express. And I think then there is sort of shame and guilt and thinking, oh, how did I get myself into this situation?
Yes. Yeah.
And I have done some trauma work around that, and I think that's been helpful. I had actually done some psychotherapy, some EMDR around that during this healing journey, and it was helpful just to speak through it. But interestingly, that did not shift the symptoms at all. The symptoms didn't shift until I actually really realized that I'm not sick. This is not caused by viruses. There's nothing faulty about my mitochondria or my DNA. I'm simply really stressed. I've been completely unseen and unheard by 50 medical practitioners over 13 years. Not a single one who ever asked, was anything stressful happening in your life before, you know, you went from being a world traveling reporter to basically being housebound, you know, and nobody asked about my stress or my underlying emotions. So that is just the heart of this, isn't it? It's really the heart of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Is what are our underlying emotional stressors and really creating a space to listen and be with those. And you do a beautiful job of that on this podcast. And I'm sure you do with clients as well. And it's such a gift to really get to what drives us as humans, which is our emotions. And they drive the state of our nervous system, which is what is creating the symptoms.
And could I just add that when people are assaulted like that, and are in the same way of all assault, we have to shut down to bear the pain of it. But it's lifting that's the problem. And then the pain comes up. We're bearing the pain of almost losing our lives. So we're going into freeze mode. So
yes, that's it. And, you know, and a lot of people will ask me about fatigue, because people often talk about chronic pain in this field, but not as much fatigue. And fatigue was an overarching symptom for me, and just heavy exhaustion. And I look at it in my case, and I think with a lot of people, it really is your brain trying to keep you in your little cave so you cannot go out in the world and be exposed to danger. Because my brain now perceived the world is a completely dangerous place. Do not go out there. I'm going to keep you safe. And I started, certainly through the recovery period when I was working with Jim, being able to see my brain as this very benevolent ally that's actually trying to help me. But the primitive part of the brain, the amygdala, does need some guidance, right? It needs some training from the conscious part of the mind, which now can evaluate, I'm not in an active danger anymore. And then we really need a safe situation to start feeling those emotions, talking through things, whether that's through journaling, with a therapist, with family members. Yeah.
Yeah. If we keep in mind that the amygdala, when it has to be activated, is activated immediately, and the neocortex, this thinking part of our brain, has to shut down so that we can either flee, fight back, or play dead. So if anyone listening or watching at the moment, see not as a guilt thing, but as a protective mechanism, as Rebecca said, a protective mechanism to make sure that we're out the other side of the trauma. But unfortunately, because the trauma is so unspeakable, it turns into pain. If we can see that, we then have a sense of care for ourselves. Because out of this chronic pain situation is this dismissal of our own feelings. Don't you?
Yes.
Do you see that all the time? Dismissal of the fear, dismissal of the anxiety, and yet it's there to keep us safe, as you said.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what you're saying, I'm seeing mirrored in some of these wonderful comments. And, you know, Brant was talking about the ignorance in the MD educational system. And from what I've learned about training to become a medical doctor, you know, that's traumatizing in and of itself. And I think that people in the medical system are also repressing emotion and maybe don't feel comfortable holding space for other people's emotions. They aren't trained how, they don't have the time. And so it's sort of a grassroots effort. We need to do this for ourselves, but find the support that we need to start feeling safe and acknowledge some of the emotions.
I'm just putting in Michael Galinsky's movie Saved by Sarno, because it actually takes people through, SARNO, what happens.
It's just an incredible documentary.
It is. I love it. I love it in so many ways. Saved by Sarno.
I want to say a couple people making comments here are so wonderful, and I just wanted to respond. You know, Sarah Lee Rainwater, who recovered from long COVID and a number of mind-body issues like migraines, are saying our bodies are strong, they're not sick. And that is so true. We're led to believe that we're so fragile, that degenerative discs are somehow a disease, which they're a normal part of aging. I was led to believe that my immune system couldn't possibly fight off a virus, but because I didn't have tissue damage, you know, my immune system had rebounded. It's just that there was this underlying freeze response. And, you know, Rose, if you don't mind me saying, I would love to give a shout out to Kathy McKinley. I see is on this in the comments. Yeah. This incredible angel of a woman was the one who spoke to me for 3 hours.
Oh,
and transmitted the TMS knowledge to me, and I had the light bulb moment. So she's just an angel. She doesn't even do this for a living. She just so gets it and is healed through so many things. And thank you, Kathy. I'm forever grateful.
Thank you, Kathy. Wow. That's beautiful. Look, you know, Kathy, can you tell us how people usually respond? Because Rebecca responded beautifully because she got it. But now that when you share your healing journey, what happens to you mostly?
Yeah, and is she going to be able to just type that in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Oh, I
Yeah.
love you too, Kathy, is saying tears of joy. Because, I'll say Kathy shared it with me with a lot of conviction. And sometimes people that went to Sarno just said it was like a transmission, right? Because he so believed that he was like a source of this. And I felt that is the way Kathy shared it with me. But also, I don't want people to get discouraged if they don't have some sort of immediate response, because most of the work, the improvement was gradual. It took me about a year to really recover, month after month of challenging my triggers, going to do things that cause symptoms, but soothing my system with affirmations, somatic tracking, and all the rest. So we'll see if Kathy shares anything about that.
Yes, yeah, because it's so, like we're all like big converts or whatever. When we get better, or when we know what the problem is, and then you want to share it with everyone, and then you get knocked back.
Yes, that's it. I don't know if everyone responded the same way. That's so sweet, Terry. Thank you for your comments. Way to go, Kathy. Yes, she's got a gift for explaining this. But you're right. Once you're really turned on to this knowledge, right? You're just such a believer. It changes your life. It improves your quality of life, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with other people. I have not found any negative side effects, other than just constantly listening to podcasts maybe may harm your social life. I don't know.
Okay, Kathy's come back to us. Okay, now I should be able to. Oh, here we are. I can show it. I'd forgotten how to do that.
Oh, great.
A lot of denial and resistance. This is in regard to sharing the good news. A lot of denial and resistance, some acceptance, but a lot of people can be afraid of changes that might need to happen. Oh, how well said, Kathy. Yeah.
That's it, because
Thank
right,
you
the
for that.
brain actually prefers certainty to uncertainty. And so even if the current situation is painful or even intolerable, there's something about our brain that really craves that stability. And is resistant to change. And I just want to say Sarah Lee Rainwater also helps coach people and is saying that people will just roll their eyes sometime.
Yes. Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh. Until they don't, right? Until they get it. I do think we're planting seeds. I really do. Because I will say, I read Sarno's Healing Back Pain during this 13-year saga, but I read it for my mom who had back pain, and I hadn't applied it to CFS, which I guess kind of leads to this question you just put up, doesn't it?
Yes.
All right. So Jeannie, yeah, it's a really great question, because I do believe in the vast majority of cases that CFS is a form of TMS. And I found it can be a little bit more complex sometimes because there's so many symptoms that can be a bit overpowering. But I would say the biggest shift was when I really believed these symptoms, even if you have 10 symptoms and you can't leave your house, they are generated by the brain and the nervous system. It is not because of viruses or autoimmune issues. If you don't have an autoimmune, I don't believe ME/CFS is autoimmune. To really get, this is caused by my brain. And the thing that is going to shift it the most is my brain feeling safe. And if I continue to search for the cure and try to fix myself, my brain is not going to feel safe. It thinks there's something wrong with me, and it continues to generate symptoms. So it was really surrendering to the symptoms that were here now, accepting them, really embracing the knowledge, learning the TMS knowledge, reading Sarno's and Schubiner's books, and reminding myself over and over I was safe and okay, not being deterred by the symptoms. And somatic tracking was really helpful. So really going into body sensations. So, fatigue often feels very heavy. I had all these burning sensations in my arms and like my brain and all through my body, but I would kind of go into them with this mindful observation and this attitude of acceptance. And that is a really powerful way to retrain your brain, that you're picking up on its signals, because it's sending the symptoms to warn you of a danger. You're picking up on them and you're sending messages back. I'm okay. I get that. Okay, I'm safe.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Now, there was, Kathy also added a little bit more. I'll include that because some friends are open to it. But doing the work of learning TMS takes time and effort. And I think that's the important take-home message, isn't it? Really, it takes the time to self-reflect, to remind yourself that you are safe and that there's someone else's, like when this self-criticism comes up, it's not really self-criticism about you. It's coming to you as a defense mechanism. If I'm critical, well, I'll do the right thing. If it's hard on me, well, then I'll be doing the right thing. It's sort of like a judgmental thing, isn't it? Okay.
It is. And I think it does take time and effort. And as we know, it's so gratifying though, right? Because you finally sort of flipped the relationship from being disempowered. I mean, this is my experience where it's like, you fix me, Rose, you've got to fix me. You've got to make these symptoms go away. You've got to make me well. Well, I feel weak and needy and scared when I'm saying that to you. And when I had that attitude for 13 years, but then when you flip it around, like, you know what, I'm empowered. I'm not to blame. This is not my fault because I didn't have this knowledge. But now I do, and I'm empowered to be present to my thoughts and emotions and watch how they drive symptoms and how they can reverse them. Right? So it really is self-empowering.
That's right. Yes. To reframe our story, really, isn't it? Reframe our story without blame. Reframe it in a manner that gives us honor. Would that be the right word? Honor? Or like,
I think it is to honor yourself, really, right?
Yeah.
Just like you would honor somebody that you love, and to
Yes.
find that self-compassion too. I mean, I think the self-empowerment and the self-compassion are like two sides of the same coin. And if you can't find that for yourself, to think of someone you love, and if they were going through this same challenge, how would you feel towards them?
Exactly. You'd want to embrace them rather than criticize them. Now, Valerie, can autoimmune be TMS? I have Hashimoto's, most definitely. Whoever you go to as a doctor should ask you what else is going on in your life. Simple question. But ask yourself that right now. What else is going on in my life that's causing this distress? And that's your opening to seeing where you need to go. So thank you for that question, Valerie. Okay, what has Margaret said? As autoimmune was mentioned, it is possible that it's TMS. Oops, something got in. Oh, okay. Radio. I'll just put down what Margaret said. It's the same as Valerie. Yeah.
And I think that this work can be very powerful for autoimmune issues as well. Absolutely. There's been studies that have showed rheumatoid arthritis, the symptoms really go down when people lower stress through mindfulness. Now, I will say Dr. Howard Schubiner, who I've trained with quite a few times, does make a distinction with autoimmune. And he does say there is tissue damage with autoimmune disorders. And so it's not exactly the same as TMS, where we're saying there's actually no tissue damage at all. This is just a process in the brain and the nervous system, where with autoimmune there is. But I will say I've known someone who actually made a full recovery from Crohn's disease through this work. His name's Joe Christie. He started something called Simply Sarno. And Crohn's is autoimmune, so he doesn't have any symptoms anymore. So physicians will make a distinction. I think it's important to mention that, but also TMS symptoms can very much be mixed in with autoimmune as well.
Okay, autoimmune is usually inflammatory. Inflammatory will come from anxiety, from the vasovagal system being overactivated. So yes, you'll get damage, you'll get, with rheumatoid arthritis. But the thing is that that vasovagal system can be calmed. So the rheumatoid arthritis is just another injury that you've had. So it's not causing pain. And I'll give you a lovely example. Here in Australia, we have terrible bushfires, and they do in America as well, in California and that. Now, I know a young woman, she was just an early teenager at the time. We did terrible bushfire, and she and her mother were trapped. And she was maybe 12. They were trapped. and they had to get out because their place was going up, and they had to drive in the dark on a country road, and they managed to get out. But that girl then got rheumatoid arthritis very quickly afterwards. And it's a really good example of that huge high level of stress. They were going to lose their lives unless they got out, they were death. So it was a life and death situation, and the inflammation never went down. So anyone with an autoimmune disease, if they actually think about it from that point of view, inflammation just doesn't let go because it was fearful.
Yeah, I think that's really an interesting story. And honestly, I believe everything has an emotional root, right? Every physical imbalance has an emotional root. And when it's extreme danger like that to your life, it can have a more profound effect. I also went after that assault. I was only 34 and I started getting hot flashes and menopausal symptoms overnight. So our bodies will respond to a threat according to the severity of the threat, and sometimes in a way that's sort of consistent with that part of the body. So let's see. Oh, it looks like Terry has a question for you, Rose.
Yeah. IFS. I just typed in the answer. Well, within ISTDP, we look at the vasovagal system, we look at the anxiety pathways, we look at the defense patterns, and we unwrap all of that. So IFS and all the different variances are actually incorporated within it. So for me, it took a long time to train. It's a 3-year training plus a further 3 years of advanced training, but it actually gathers together all these other systems and gives us a pattern to work with the patient right through. So if a patient doesn't get better by reading the Sarno book and doing the meditation and reflection and that, something like ISTDP will shift it all together. And if Terry is interested, Alan Abbas has got so many RTCs, ABBASS, he's at Dalhousie University.
Okay, yeah. And I know, Terry was asking about internal family systems, and I do know some TMS coaches and therapists are starting to integrate internal family systems with TMS just as another modality, sort of work with emotions and work with those parts of us that have become overly protective, overly critical as a response to our childhood situation, and to try to kind of damp those down. So it's
and if you think about the critical part and the part that cares for you and how that's operating within you, that's a really good way of describing internal family systems. Like this whole idea of being critical is not really you. It's a part of you that wants to keep you in line, put it that way. Yeah. Now, okay, I must be TMS. Yeah, of course. All of these things, Valerie. No, everything is, as Rebecca said, our brain, our emotions, our feelings are an integral part of us. And when there's any sort of inflammation, whatever it is, response is going to have a symptom. And of course, our medical profession is going to give it a tag. And it's the tag that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. The tag, right. And it's like at some point when you're sort of desperate, you want a diagnosis because you think that's going to help you get well. But if the doctors don't have a treatment, that label can really just become a burden, right? It can become quite a fear. When people say to me, doctors can't find anything wrong, it's so frustrating, I say, that's great news. I understand it's frustrating, but it's great that they can't find anything wrong.
Well said. Oh, Rebecca, is so beautiful, because patients sort of see a problem, but in actual fact, it's a solution, isn't it? Because there must be something. There must be something good happening to me that I'm needing to do this to change my life. Yeah.
That's it. And I know that it's so hard to see that when you're in the midst of it and you're really miserable. And there were years where I was just suffering deeply. So I get it. But on the other side, like Rose, and like we have a lot of experienced TMS people who have healed here, I see in the chat. I don't think we'd give it up for the world, right? Like, yes, I wouldn't want to have to suffer like that again, but I wouldn't give up the self-awareness, the self-kindness, and
The
also the
result.
compassion for other people that comes. I used to be much more critical and judgmental, but now when I see people that are maybe anxious and trying to control things, I understand that comes from childhood experiences where they reacted in a way to make sure their needs were met or whatever it is. So it just gives you a lot more understanding and compassion for yourself and others.
Yeah. And empathy for other people's suffering. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Kathy is saying, I find dealing with the medical system to be the most challenging aspect. Yeah, it's so interesting, Kathy, because I feel like now a doctor would have a hard time convincing me there's anything physically wrong with me. I could have a broken bone and I would be like, no, I don't believe that, because I've so gone to the other side. But I do think it's important, of course, to get checked out if you have sort of new symptoms. And obviously allopathic medicine is good for certain things. It's great for diagnosing acute pathological issues. But yeah, the medical system changes much more slowly than science, because now we have a lot of science that actually shows that with chronic pain, it's certain parts of the brain that are overactive. It's not certain parts of the body that are actually causing the pain or the symptom. Yeah, thanks, Sarah, I can say that is for sure. She has got so much compassion for others. Sarah is just this incredible woman. She's a teacher, a mother of two in Seattle, and she just spends her lack of free time talking to people with long COVID to help them recover, just out of the kindness of her heart. She put together an incredible document on how she recovered from long COVID and migraines and other symptoms. So
where will we find that? Where will we find that?
Yeah, I wonder if I could access it. So I did interview Sarah on my YouTube channel, and I could link that because I think her link is there. I can look for that.
All right. Okay. That would be good, because I think that reinforces that it's safe. Now, do you think that we should do a practice of somatic tracking for people now? Would you like to do that?
Absolutely. I think, does it seem like a good time, Rose?
Yes, it does. It's
I'm Rebecca
almost.
Tolin. I am a mind.
Yeah. Oops, I was actually just trying to post this video with Sarah. So excuse me.
Yeah, you've got to do it through Facebook.
I had to just go off there, and there we go. Oh, I have to do it through Facebook. Okay. Yeah. You know what? I think let's post that after the show, if that's okay, because I'd have to open a few more windows for that.
Yeah.
All right. I spilled that glass of water. Hopefully that didn't go into the computer. I don't think it did.
No, we've still got you. Oh, good. Right. Oh, do please, Sarah. That would be good. Excellent. Sarah will do it for us.
Oh, that'd be great if Sarah could post it all in the comments.
Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Rebecca is going to take us down to that space in our bodies. So I hand it over to you completely, Sarah.
Okay, perfect. And Rose, you're just thinking maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Somatic tracking.
Yeah.
So let me just do kind of a little prelude to this. I learned the somatic tracking technique from Jim Prusak and a training I did in person with Alan Gordon and Howard Schubiner back when we used to do that kind of thing in 2018, and then have kind of adapted it as my own. But the somatic tracking, it seems so simple, but it's really powerful. I felt that it was the core piece of my healing. I did it every night before bed, and it really broke this insomnia pattern that I had had for 13 years. But you don't want to do somatic tracking with anything that's too painful. So if you have a sensation in your body that's so painful that it's going to cause you more fear or anxiety to tune into it, don't focus on that. Just choose maybe something that's a little bit uncomfortable, or even something that's neutral is okay as well. All right. So go ahead and just find a comfortable position. So that can be sitting, that can be laying down, whatever's comfortable, that you can just take a few minutes to turn inward. And you want to let your eyes close if that's relaxing, or at least let them sort of gaze downward. Coming into the interior spaces. So bringing your attention downward and inward. First, you can tune into your breath and just notice the rhythm of your breath as it is. So without trying to change the breath, just notice where you can feel the breath inside. You may notice your rib cage expanding and then contracting. You might notice a gentle rise and fall of your chest or your belly. Just let yourself tune into the breath just as it is, without needing to change anything at all, just with the curiosity. So often the breath is a neutral or even a comforting sensation. It's just like an ocean tide coming in and going out again and again. And so if anything ever gets uncomfortable, you can just return to the breath. And as thoughts come into your mind, just let them go. You can just label them thinking and come back to feeling, because thoughts will inevitably come. But now I'm going to point you to sensations. So let your mind drop down into your body, all the way through your body, down into your feet, and notice any physical or emotional sensations. That could be a tingly sensation in your arms, maybe a fluttery feeling in your heart, or a tension in your stomach, or a swirling in your head. Whatever it is okay and safe. And I'm going to ask you to just choose one sensation. So again, something that doesn't spike fear, that you can attend to with some relaxation. It's okay if it's uncomfortable, as long as you can just stay with it. And bring your mind down into that sensation. Notice if it has a shape. Where is it located? Is it widespread, or is it localized in one little area? And we're doing this entire practice as if we're just watching clouds in the sky, not like we're studying for a test. So you're just easy, open. There's nothing to do or accomplish, because we know that there's nothing wrong with these sensations. They're safe, they're okay. And so really tracking the sensation with your awareness, you're noticing the shape and the characteristics. Maybe there's a burning or a shooting. Maybe there's a tingling, or even a dull sensation will have some kind of feeling quality to it. And you're really sending safety signals back to your brain that you're safe and okay. You have everything you need in this moment. We don't need to make the sensation go away. But if it moves, move with it. Just let your awareness follow it. Just being very curious, like you're watching a storm in the sky. Just breathing into it, and notice if you want to sigh, or if your body feels like moving, let it do that. Sometimes these physical sensations will actually start shifting into more emotional sensations. That's okay too. Sadness can feel heavy. Fear might feel jittery. Anger might feel hot or intense. You're just paying attention to the sensation in this one part of the body and knowing that you are okay. And so if you want, you can continue this practice a little while longer. But otherwise, for everybody else, again, just come back to the breath. And just notice if the rhythm of the breath has changed at all. We're not trying to make it change, but we're just curious. Sometime it'll come down a little bit more. Just notice how that breath feels moving in and then out of the body. And you may also notice yourself in the space where you are by feeling the parts of your body that are supported by the room that you're in. Just noticing any contact the bottoms of your feet have, or your seat or your back, whatever is being supported, and just notice those sensations. Coming back into this sense of being rooted in your body in the space that you're in. And so again, take as long as you need, but for the purposes of this broadcast, we'll come back here with Rose. And just kind of slowly flutter open your eyes when you're ready if you haven't. And you can always kind of look around the room a bit, orient to your room again. Oh, wow. Come back
to that. Now, when would you suggest our viewers do this?
Yeah, so I would suggest there's sort of two different main ways to do somatic tracking. One is just as a relaxation practice that you can take, say, 5 or 10 or 15 minutes out of your day or your evening. So whenever you kind of want to bring a little bit more calming and soothing in your day. I used to do it every evening before bed. I just loved doing it in bed.
Okay,
but
hold for a sec. Could we mention that doing that will calm the vasovagal system so insomnia won't be as pronounced? So by calming the mind and slowing it down and doing that somatic tracking, then when we go to bed, we're more rested. Our body is actually at rest. And in
That's
actual fact, yeah.
I think it really helped break this 13-year cycle of insomnia. The somatic tracking for me was really important before bed because that was such a primary symptom that I was concerned about. After I would have insomnia, I'd feel like I had the flu the next day. But, you know, I have people that like to do this at a certain time, even starting the day with it. But the other way to do it is through activity, and Alan Gordon teaches it this way quite a bit, that say you're challenging a behavior that or a position that causes a symptom. So say sitting causes pain or walking causes pain, you actually do a little bit of the activity while you're reinforcing, I'm safe, my body is capable of this activity, and you're just paying attention to the sensations because that sub-communicates to the brain and the nervous system. You've gotten its signal because it's just trying to warn you, and you're sending a message back. So it's like a conversation. I'm okay, I got this, and I'm going to do this activity anyway. I'm going to sit or walk or stand. I'm capable of this. So you can either do it kind of resting or in the activity that is causing your symptoms. Just in baby steps, though, you know, you don't want to ever overwhelm yourself and cause too much.
In a gentle way. Now, also, Rebecca, that type of somatic tracking could be done in a mini way when people wake up in the morning, because patients often say, I'm a nervous wreck from the moment I open my eyes. So if they actually do that somatic tracking, not just in a way of what's happening in my shoulders, what's happening in my back, what's happening in my hips, what's happening in my legs. Something even simpler. You don't even have to spend 10 minutes doing it. 3 minutes will be enough to create that awareness that when you jump out of bed and you're rushing off to your important whatever meeting,
Yes,
your
yes,
body is calm.
absolutely, Rose. And I'm glad you said that, because now I'm really blessed that I don't generally have any really strong sensations. And so when I wake up in the morning, that's just what I do. I actually tune into the physical body sensations, like, oh, where's my body? And I do sometimes have aching in the morning because that subconscious mind was active overnight. And I just get curious, oh, what am I feeling physically? And then I also tune into, oh, what am I feeling emotionally? And I'll notice, are there emotions in my body? But you can do it in 1 minute, 2 minutes. And in fact, doing it throughout the day, little check-ins is a great idea. That practice I just led you through, it's just really helpful to check in with emotions as well. So part of my healing was really throughout the day, because I couldn't really feel my emotions. I felt really disconnected. I was just feeling symptoms still. And so
you think they're in your head, don't you? Like
yeah,
you say, oh, I'm angry, and you think, oh yeah, I'm very angry. And you, well, where is that anger? Well, I'm thinking about it. I'm not feeling it.
that was it. So I actually would set a timer, and I just sort of ask, how am I feeling emotionally throughout the day? And sometime I started cultivating that practice, and I started feeling more emotions. But even if you just start feeling the physical sensations or the pain, it's the same as the emotions. You know, the definition of pain is a physical or sensory experience with or without tissue damage, according to, I think it's the International Association of Pain. So once you start feeling these sensations in a physical way, often it opens up this world of emotion too.
Oh, look what Terry just said.
Oh, Terry's so wonderful. Oh my goodness. Terry warms my heart. And she is such an incredible person. She does all kinds of fundraisers now, walking across, I don't know, Tennessee, walking across the country. I think this was on one of her walks. She's overcome all kinds of things, and it's just such a beacon of light. Thank you for joining us, Terry, in San Antonio, Texas. So I know it's a little bit late there. It's past 10 o'clock your time. Oh,
wow.
And thank you. Sarah Rainwater shared the document. And so she has this document on all these resources on recovering from long COVID. And, you know, I should just say that I'm consulting on a clinical trial through a physician that's with Harvard Medical School with long COVID patients using Sarno's and Schubiner's work. So it's an actual pilot study. And we do believe that a lot of people with long COVID are facing TMS, because once they have recovered, if there isn't tissue damage, the symptoms are very similar to chronic fatigue syndrome or POTS or other things that we know people can recover from with this work.
Oh, that's fantastic. Rebecca, thank you so much. I don't think we've got any more questions. Anyone who does have questions, Sarah can actually respond. I'll respond, whichever. And may the force be with you all. How's that?
Thank you, Rose. It was such a delight. May the force be with you indeed.
Yes. Okay.
Good day. Good night.
Good night. Good day. Yes. All the rest of it. There we are. I need to figure out how to stop it.
Normally Tova's doing this part, right?
That's right.
We may be with you all night.
That's right. And the request failed again. Tova, where are you?
Well, maybe it doesn't want us to end yet. Oh, thanks for all the love, Kathy and Brant and Sarah. Yeah. We have a parade of love here. Oh, we do. You're all treasures, truly.
Isn't that weird that it won't stop streaming?
It won't stop streaming. Well, apparently, maybe it's just having a good old time.
Yes, it's sort of, because we haven't got Tova here.
It has a life of its own, and we have a whole community of people. I wish I could help you, but I haven't actually used this platform.
Well, there's nothing you can do, because all I have to do is press stop. stop streaming, and it won't stop.
Oh, you've pressed stop and it won't stop streaming. Okay, that's quite a first.
Yeah.
Oh, we may be TMS Roundtable Global Eternal.
Forever. Yeah.
Well, right. We'll really test our stamina. Terry says it doesn't want to let you go any more than we do. Oh, you're so sweet, and I know it's the wee hours of the night there. Well, meanwhile,
right,
as we're
just
trying
hang up,
to figure this out, if you have any other questions,
good night, good day, everyone, and my apologies that it won't stop streaming. My beloved Tova, where are you, my darling?
Dear Tova, we could use her, but she's probably sleeping.
Yeah,
I should say that Hannah wrote a nice comment about she was searching online wanting to read someone's recovery story. Was so happy this live came up. Hannah, we're so glad you joined us. There's I have other recovery stories too on my website and YouTube channel, and there's so many. This TMS Roundtable is just a beacon of recovery stories. You've probably covered just about every diagnosis available, right?
Yes, exactly.
And I don't think we even talked tonight about the interstitial cystitis, but that was also something I recovered from that is 100% TMS and just really a response to stress. And I think of interstitial cystitis sort of being pissed off. It's like the bladder is holding that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's actually straight muscle and smooth muscle anxiety clinically.
So I don't know, Rose, maybe you'll have to turn off your computer.
Maybe. Streaming on Facebook, though.
Oh, it will be.
Bizarre. All right, folks, I'm going to hang up.
Okay, she's going to hang up. Good night, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining us for this marathon session.
Yes.
Thank you, Rose. Oh dear, I think that, this means I'm in the hot seat. I didn't realize that when she was hanging up, that means I think I'm still live, and I'm not actually sure how to hang up. Okay, well, in case I am still live, I am just going to X this out. Thanks, everyone. You're all wonderful. I appreciate all the love. Brant, Terry, Sarah, everybody who joined, Hannah, Valerie, Kathy, Johnny from San Diego. Wonderful to see you all, and we'll see you again soon.